Okay, welcome to Show Sparks for May. Today's topic is around holacracy. To get started, my name is Dawna Jones. I'm the co-host for Show Sparks. We started this along with my colleague Sander Hewson, who is from the Netherlands, now in Perth on a completely different time zone. So we started this program a year ago, and it was really to share management ideas worldwide and begin to exchange ideas so that we could make better, ideas that you could pick up and use in your work, stimulate thought, rethink how things are done, create better workplaces, and as a result, much better and more prosperous business. So that's the idea behind it. We have this website, showsparks.com, where we keep and archive these programs, but also if you use the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag Stos, you'll see other information pop up. So that's Show Sparks. So today I've got as my guest both Bernard Manichiquet, who I believe is in traffic en route in Paris. He may join us in the next 15 minutes, which, by the way, we shortened the programs to 15 minutes as an executive briefing format. And I also have Diederick Janse, who is from Utrecht in the Netherlands, and Diederick has been a holacracy coach and also author for, what, 8 years?
Well, the holacracy, I don't know what to call it. Someone who loves it for about 8 years, a coach for, I don't know, maybe half that, and an author for less than a year. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Diederick. So I'm going to start by just going to Diederick and asking him how he got involved in holacracy, and then we'll move into the question that brought you to this conversation, which is basically what does holacracy do that traditional hierarchies can't do? Certainly in North America, Zappos moving to holacracy created a media interesting stir-storm around, oh my gosh, and it's chaos now, and we don't have managers with titles. What do? We don't know what to call people. So fascinating reaction to that, and yet it's just not that complicated, although at the other side of it, it is. So let me start with Diederick to find out, Diederick, how did you get involved in holacracy and when?
Yeah, that must have been in 2006 when I first read a white paper by an American guy called Brian Robertson, who was a software engineer and a CEO. And I think he used his company at the time as a little bit of an experiment to try out different ways of working together, different ways of making decisions. Just anything that they were doing, they were trying out different stuff. And at some point started finding some things that seemed to work, which ended up morphing and evolving into a thing called holacracy. And he wrote a white paper that I read about it. It was intriguing. I was actually a little skeptic at first, but interested enough to ask Brian to come out to Amsterdam, Netherlands, to talk a bit more about that. And that was in 2007, and that's how I first got involved. And when I heard Brian talk about holacracy as a different model for running an organization, that's when it started clicking a little bit. But like you said, in some ways it's simple, in other ways it's complex. It's taken me a couple of years to really to get up to speed with this, and it's only in the past couple of years that I've decided that I'm making my full-time profession out of this, which I'm enjoying very much.
Well, obviously you don't make a change like that unless you enjoy it, because there'd be no point to it. You make a radical different shift in your work, and unless you're getting the reward of feeling good about what you're doing, there's no point. Let's start, Diederick, by jumping into the first question of the day, which is, what do companies need in order to rapidly adjust to change? There's a lot of companies that are really wrestling with the speed of change, and they're using the old traditional hierarchical style. It's stiff, it's rigid, it's slow from a decision-making point of view, and just what's valuable right now in terms of the relationship between what holacracy brings and what hierarchical companies are up to, traditional structure.
Well, when it comes to decision making, I'm reminded of a quote that I think was made by someone at HP. I'm not exactly sure, but it's something around most companies die not of starvation, but of indigestion. It's not so much that they don't get nourished by ideas and everything else, but it's that they don't get them processed or digested into actions, ideas, into something that can be tried and that can be experimented with. And somehow from someone having an idea into the company trying something out and actually making a change, something gets in the way of that, and a lot actually gets filtered out by lots of different things. In fact, that was the question that really led Brian to start experimenting in his own company. The question that he asked himself is what gets in the way of me processing any type of idea, any type of frustration, something that's not working as it should. In Holacracy, that's called a tension. It's not so much meant as a negative thing, it's more neutral. It's a gap between where something is right now and where it could be. It could be something very small and insignificant, could be very big, all the way up to, like the organization's purpose. And any time that you sense such a gap or a tension, then ideally you would want to process that into some type of action, some type of change. And at the very least experiment with that and see how the response to that, whether that's indeed a good idea or not. But in most companies it's very hard, particularly when there's a lot of hierarchy and you actually have to either convince your colleagues in endless meetings where no decisions get made, or you have to go to the boss and then the boss doesn't agree, or he has some kind of pet project or some kind of stake, and then that doesn't work. So there are lots of reasons why ideas don't actually get processed, and why companies suffer of indigestion, not starvation.
Interesting, interesting quote, definitely. Now, why is hierarchies? Why is holacracy? Sorry, I keep getting those two words mashed up. Why is holacracy an alternative for them? What does it do differently?
Yeah, well, in effect, it actually tries to take away any obstacle towards trying stuff out, towards rapidly processing these gaps or tensions, anything that you observe, into some type of change. And one of the big ones that it gets rid of is actually managers themselves. Particularly when Zappos, this online retailer, came out last December and said that they were going to adopt this new operating model called Holacracy. One of the things that was picked up a lot by media, including CNN and Fox, was that they were getting rid of managers. And it's not exactly true. In effect, it would be more accurate to say that everyone is being made a manager at Zappos. Running Holacracy, everyone manages themselves and their roles. Everyone in Holacracy fills various roles. Could be one, but often more than one, which comes with a number of accountabilities, but it also comes with a lot of autonomy. There's no longer, when you're, for example, maybe you fill a social media role, there's no longer someone that you need to go to get approval, or to pitch your ideas to. You're actually the manager or the boss of that role, and really you're the only one in the organization that can make those decisions. So you could say that even former managers will need to learn to follow when it comes to something like social media or any other type of role. So it's a little bit different in that respect.
I was also reading, and I thought this is really helpful, because when I first got introduced to Holacracy, it was a couple of years ago, and I was having the same kind of challenge around wrapping my mind around it. The tension part I got totally, because I've seen that happen in my own work in organizations. But what I think the differentiating quality was that Holacracy is a way of organizing the work, as opposed to hierarchies, hierarchical structures which organize the people. And it shifts the focus completely away from power and who has it, and how can I manipulate it, use it, and the politics of power, into how do we get things done, which is, I think, the pertinent question in companies.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's something that a lot of people misunderstand. They think that Holacracy actually gets rid of hierarchy. It doesn't actually do that. It gets rid of hierarchies of people, as you said. But there are still hierarchies of work in Holacracy. For example, just as another example, social media as a role would probably be part of some type of team, or that may be called a circle in Holacracy, which may be the marketing circle. And that circle itself would probably be part of a larger company-wide circle. So there's definitely a hierarchy there. But it's not a hierarchy of people, it's a hierarchy of work and scope and purpose.
Yeah, well put, very well put. Now, let me look at the transition stage between companies that have been working in traditional structures and now they're looking at introducing, like Zappos did, Holacracy. What is the, I'm going to bring this down to a very personal level, what is the emotional transition that a manager from the former has to make in order to step into Holacracy?
Hmm. Well, I think it's quite simple. I think the key emotional shift that you're making is one of letting go. So where before, as a manager, you would probably be quite alert, and you'd definitely not be micromanaging everything and everyone. At least, some of us do, but most of us don't. Um, um, but you would still be quite alert. Like, is it running smoothly? There's a quality of feeling responsibility for the whole, which may be the team or the company, whatever it is. That kind of goes away with holacracy. In fact, you get lots of roles that have not just responsibilities, but also real authority, real autonomy to make decisions. And so there's a lot of letting go of that type of autonomy and authority, and trusting those roles to make those decisions. Those are the people that are involved with the day-to-day work, and trusting them to make the best decisions in their specific areas. So there's still there's a role in holacracy which is called a lead link, which retains some specific authorities, such as allocating resources, or even deciding who fills which roles. And that's often mistaken for a different name for a manager, which gets confusing. In some ways it looks like a manager, but actually it's not. So in the beginning there's a lot of letting go, and then after people start to get a little habituated to this new way of working, then there are actually different types of leadership that a former manager.
Uh-oh. We've semi-lost you there, Diederick.
Can start to express in service of the organization's purpose.
Yeah, for those of you watching, Diederick's in Utrecht, and there's a thunderstorm going through, so he's anticipated some disruption, and we're getting it. Let me go back to.
Yep, I think we're good now.
Okay, let's hope so. The part that I find interesting is something that Daniel Stola from the Lean and 5% on LinkedIn mentioned, which is when you let go of control, you get more back. You actually gain control, but instead of gaining control over people, you get control over performance. Is that a fair assessment of holacracy? When as a manager, you let go of control and you get back more than you could ever imagine in terms of performance?
Heard that exact frame before, but yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And I think the way I talk about it is that you let go of one type of control, which is more the autocratic hierarchical control, and you gain another type of control, which is one where there is a lot of transparency about what's happening and about the progress of the work, about how people are setting priorities, what they're accountable for, and what they're doing, what they're not doing. And so you get, rather than control, there's more your ability to sense, to notice things that aren't working or that aren't progressing as they should, just becomes a lot bigger because of that type of transparency. And actually, you get a lot of you get a lot of I would almost say channels for processing those types of tensions, like anything that's not on cruise control, anything that's not working out. There are many ways in holacracy to get clarity and to get things moving again. And those channels are really available to everyone, not just to a former manager, but really to everyone, and everyone uses those. So if anything, the circle or a team will start to manage themselves, for example, using some really cool meeting processes. So yeah, that's what I would say, a different type of control.
Excellent, thank you. Now, Diederick, one last question before we close in the minute here. Where do people go for more information? I know that if Bernard Marie were here, he would refer them to his Parisian website, which is igipartners.com. For you, how would people in the Netherlands, at least, or in Europe, get to know, contact you on more?
Well, probably the easiest thing would be to find me on Twitter, which is my handle is Diederick Janse, which is my name. It's not exactly the easiest response, but it should be showing up in the screen. And they can also look for the book I wrote just last year, which is called Getting Teams Done. It's a play of words on the quite well-known productivity method called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And in fact, there's a lot of similarities between Getting Things Done and Holacracy. You could call Holacracy something like Getting Things Done for teams or for organizations. So that's a book that's only available in Dutch right now, Getting Teams Done. We're going into second print and looking at an English translation, so hopefully soon that will be available to English speakers as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Diederick, for being on the program. Got another program coming up May 30th, which will be one you can rewatch after on Spark the Change, a conference that's happening in the UK, so stay tuned for that. And Diederick, again, thanks for joining me today and the Stowe Sparks program. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dawna.